Running a business is unpredictable, but with the right insurance, you can face the unexpected with confidence. At Northwest Insurance Agency, we protect what matters most: your people, your property, and your future. Whether it's liability, property, or workers' comp, we tailor coverage to fit your business needs. Because when you're covered, you can focus on what really matters: growing your business. Call us today for a free quote at 1-855-887-5656 or visit us at nwagencies.com. Northwest Insurance Agency, protection that works as hard as you do.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency. Give Mark Villasana a call, 214-352-5656, for him to review your insurance today. And insurance is a great segue for today's podcast, as it is officially the transfer portal spring window. Portal is open. Players are going in and not just expected to go in anymore. They're now actually showing up in that thing we call the portal that is just throwing more and more chaos every day at college football teams across the country. It seems like obviously the Nico Iamaleava saga has dominated the headlines over the last week or so. Our guy Pete Nakos getting a nice new contract extension out of that from On3 after being called out by Nico's dad, but yet Pete stuck to his guns and was right. So what a world we're living in, and we will be here to cover it for you guys on the Pony Express podcast and at ontheponyexpress.com. So make sure you sign up for just $1. Today, we're going to give you your portal primer. Okay. So we're going to kind of break down SMU's portal departures. We've seen some names that might even be surprising for some, announce or leak or tell or whatever that they are entering the portal. They'll show up here soon in the portal and are leaving SMU. We'll also talk about maybe some of the positions that they can go after in the portal and what spots maybe they should address just overall. But before we do that, I do want to remind you guys that we are also presented by the Thomas Auto Group. Head up 75 to McKinney at any of their 3 dealerships, Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen, and learn about the Thomas Promise. Get employee pricing on new and pre-owned vehicles. So what a great deal when you mention ontheponyexpress.com. So check them out. SMU owned, Brandon Thomas, his entire family running the show over there. Make sure you check them out. And also their service department is great too. Spend some time over there. I know later this summer I'm going to have to get my another round of oil change done. So always enjoy getting over there. They got a great waiting area to work. So appreciate the Thomas Auto Group for supporting us. Let's dive in with the portal departures, because I feel like that is the news of the kind of early part of the week here, because SMU, at least from our perspective on the message board at ontheponyexpress.com, we talk a lot about who's entering. We talk a lot about who they're going after. And that who we're going after really is what dominates the conversation, right? When people leave, unless there's, a major name departing, people don't really sweat it because they say, well, the portal's there. We'll go get somebody to address the position and fix it. Now, SMU had 3 players enter the transfer portal. Of course, I just had it. Don't have it right now. They had 3 players enter the transfer portal this December window. Now they're going to have a few more. And look, as great as that number was, that SMU had the lowest number of transfer portal players leaving the program, that number wasn't necessarily going to stick. Jahari Rogers left in the middle of the season. Omari Abor was total mutual parting of ways, I guess, on that one. Just, that was pretty evident. And it's pretty evident he hasn't landed anywhere from what I gather. So, I think SMU was right on that. There's a little sour grapes there. But Preston Stone entered, of course. He's now at Northwestern, probably going to be the starting quarterback. I saw a Northwestern quarterback enter the portal today as well. And my phone just keeps blowing up. So I apologize if I continuously look down, but you never know what our guy Pete Nakos is going to break with the portal window. But let's dive into the departures, because SMU, if all of these guys do in fact end up entering the portal, will end up being will have surpassed that number of players that has left the program in short order. And the first one I want to touch on is LJ Johnson, because this is one that Rhett Lashley addressed last week. And in case you just missed it, we'll kind of run it down for you again. But the big thing here with LJ is playing time. And he had his opportunity in the spring to go out and prove that he could very well be a player that SMU relied on and been a 1A option, 1B option in the backfield. But that's not what happened. You know, Derek McFall and Chris Johnson Jr. really emerged as serious players for SMU. And I think it even really surprised the staff in a way. Like, I don't want to speak for them, but what Chris Johnson Jr. has done has been really impressive on the football field. You know, just his ability to break the big one. And then, of course, they do love Derek McFall, and we've known that for a while. And he's been, I think, the most impressive 2024 signee that SMU has had, at least just off the top of my head right there, because he's emerging into a starter. I mean, he would be my pick to start. It could very well end up being Chris Johnson Jr., but just what Derek McFall has done and brought to the table, I just think it's been pretty unbelievable what he's been able to do. So, you know, the running back room is thin, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but they have guys that they really feel like are talented and can get things done for them in a big way. And so that's something to certainly keep an eye on as they do shop in the portal. They're not necessarily shopping for an instant impact guy, but LJ Johnson is hoping to go be an instant impact guy somewhere else. And with 1 year left, it makes a lot of sense. So no hard feelings there, I'm sure, on the SMU side of things with LJ Johnson, but he is officially going to enter the portal. He had 994 yards rushing and 11 rushing touchdowns in his career so far. Again, that 1 year remaining. So it's a big year for him. So best of luck to LJ. And the probably two surprising guys that are entering the portal, if you've been following, are two younger players who SMU was kind of hoping that one day they would break out, but hadn't happened just yet. And, you know, I think this next one is probably the most surprising so far of the portal for me, and that's Zach Smith. The former Red Oak standout was somebody I was really high on. He played safety, played linebacker at Red Oak, undersized, you know, not the biggest guy. And I think maybe looking back now, as he's going to enter the portal, he'll have 4 years of eligibility left. He redshirted last year. I think probably the thing that maybe has held him back in a sense is that, yes, undersized, but maybe his frame was a little too limited in a sense. Like, you know, Brandon Booker's got some size to him. He can add weight, and as he gets older, he'll fill out a little bit more, I think. Zach, being that 5'11", 6 foot, I mean, maybe 6'1", listed at 6'1", linebacker, I just think his frame just doesn't necessarily remind me of like a Kobe Wilson that's going to be like this big dude. Because I mean, if you've ever met Kobe Wilson is a big dude. So I don't know if that was it. Like playing in the muck, you know, would have worked out with his size. But I was really hoping that he would, you know, pan out. He was a great commit, was really active recruiting players, was really just a joy to deal with. So he's moving on. That one was probably the one that surprised me. I just felt like with the linebacker room where it is, when you have Alex Kilgore, Zakai Barker, who are, no doubt emerging as the starters, along with Brandon Miazono having a good spring. You've got Justin Medlock in there. You've got Brandon Booker. You've got Mark Iannacor, who's really impressed. They have depth, but I just felt like it just kind of surprised me. So maybe SMU goes after a linebacker in the portal. Wouldn't be surprising with Zach Smith entering the portal, but just something to keep an eye on there, because SMU also doesn't have a 2025 summer guy coming in at that position. So they just signed the one with Mark Iannacor enrolling early. So Zach Smith entering, and then Jamarian Carroll. And this one hurts for a different reason, because I stumped for two guys in the class of 2023 to be 4-star prospects, and one was Jamarian Carroll, and one was Alex Kilgore. If I have my, I don't know if I actually have my, yeah. All right, I have my years right. Crazy. Alex Kilgore, already a junior, hate it already. But he's going to be a really good player for SMU. But I stumped for Alex Kilgore. I stumped for Jamarian Carroll. The highlights of him, even that one game that I went to where it went to overtime against Bernie, I think. And I think Wichita Falls Rider won. And he was just such a huge, or Wichita Falls Husky won. And he was a huge piece to it. He had like a reverse pass that he jumped through like 60 yards. And then, of course, everybody remembers his in the air 360 hurdle that he did in his highlights. So he's always been freaky. He didn't pick things up at the college level, and it's unfortunate. So he'll look to go somewhere else. It's definitely somebody that I don't know if Power 4 will take a flyer on, but I would think he lands at a G5 level and somebody gives him a go, because I mean, one thing too, with most college coaches, at that level, you can kind of pub bringing in a former 4-star, because On3 ultimately listened to me and gave him a 4-star. So next time we'll pick the defensive guy for the 4-star. So that's that. But Jamarian Carroll, sucks to see him go, because he made some plays in the spring, but I just think picking up the playbook was something that was always in the way for him. And then finally, another offensive player leaving, Kayshawn Sapp. He transferred from Florida State last spring to East Carolina and left East Carolina in the spring, I think, if I have this right, and then ended up, there it is, last year, 419, entering the portal, and committed to SMU a few days later, and kind of was expected to add some depth. And that's exactly what he was. For SMU, they like carrying a lot. I mean, a lot of offensive linemen. I mean, what program doesn't? And if you've followed kind of the model here, I think, is obviously SMU wants to go out and get guys like an Andrew Chamblee, an Addison Nichols, a Savion Byrd, Josh Bates, guys that have starts under their belt at a SEC level. And then you have players like Logan Parr, no disrespect, he has panned out beautifully. But at Texas, he really didn't play, and they kind of cast him off, and he was kind of a player that made a lot of sense for SMU to bring in, because they had he was a Texas guy. They maybe had some ties. They had some other Texas guys, I think, that they were bringing in, whatever. And they kind of brought in Logan Parr, hoping he would pan out. And sure enough, he did. And I think that was kind of the deal with Kayshawn Sapp is here's a guy that I think looks the part. I don't know if he ever bought into bulking up. He's always been kind of a little trim, like opposite of Paris Patterson in a sense. But he's now entering the portal after 1 year. I don't even know how many years left he has, but he hasn't really cracked the 2 deep, hasn't been close. So moving on for a better opportunity, I would imagine he drops down to the group of 5 level and goes from there. So best of luck to Kayshawn. He seemed well liked too. Like pretty much all these guys are not, I don't think, issues in the locker room or anything like that. So they're all going to get the full support of Rhett Lashley, as he said last week, to find new places and find new homes and go from there. But SMU losing a few more players now than they did in that fall portal window, and they'll still be among the programs that lose the least amount of players in this transfer portal window. But the 105 is an intriguing piece to all of this, because somebody said it on the board. I think it was Whiskey Pony on our message board. Again, sign up for $1 for your first week to chat with us. But he said, man, you would think with a larger roster limit and technically like more scholarships, you'd have more room to play with. Yes, in theory, but for SMU, they also like quality walk-ons. And so this is one piece of the rule that I don't know. If you have to scholarship every 105, or if you can go 85 and then 20 walk-ons and it's just a roster limit, I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter in the conversation. But what I can say is that SMU likes a lot of their walk-ons, and they like them for culture. They like them for how they work, and scout team guys too. Like if you bring in players and you have 105 scholarship players, that bottom 30, you might as well unless they're freshmen, unless they're all true freshmen that aren't going to play year one, which SMU doesn't want to sign those type of guys. You want to find guys that can play as well. But SMU has to play those 30 some guys on scout team. And so that's the easiest way to say, oh, you're on scout team this year. Well, you're going to be entering the portal next year because you're unhappy that you're on scout team. So there's all this kind of line to walk with the roster limits. And so that's ultimately where it came down to. We haven't actually really asked Rhett Lashlee if they're going hard 85 like some of the SEC school, or actually all the SEC schools are, or if they're, kind of got some wiggle room or whatever they're doing. But I mean, they're pretty much all these players are outside of LJ. They would have loved to have kept LJ for depth and have him stick around for his final year. But outside of that, I mean, I get the feeling that all of these guys were, they had honest conversations with and are moving on. And we haven't talked about, Tyler Aronson, Jalen Knighton, Kamar Wheaton, Reagan Gill, Alex Rogers. Those are all guys who are departing. We've covered, but we've covered the new guys. So, I mean, SMU approaching, double-digit guys that are going to be entering the portal this spring window. So, going to be intriguing to follow. We spent way too much time on the departures, so sorry about that. But it's all interesting, right? Like you see some of these young players that are brought in. And remember, I will say this. Even though I thought Jamarian Carroll, a 4-star prospect, was going to be a baller. Like I really thought I still think he could have been so much fun in the slot. Just a little bit of size, a little bit of ability, or a lot of ability, a lot of potential. But all of these guys that are younger were recruited for and committed to SMU before they found out they were in the ACC. Like Alex Rogers, Zach Smith, obviously Jamarian Carroll, but Alex Rogers, Zach Smith, Tyler Aronson, those were guys that they took commitments from before their senior years, if I got all the timing right. And then they stayed committed. They signed them. SMU found out during that time they were in the ACC. And then they come to campus and are looking for fresh starts now. So this is why, and one final thought on all this, this is why these next couple of years, watching the development of the 24 class to an extent, but really this 25 class, 26. So you're looking at 27, 28 as the years where you'll really be able to assess. I know that sounds so silly, but you'll really be able to assess SMU's evaluation of high school players. Because, they flipped Ahmad Moses. They had Isaiah Wacobia when Rhett Lashlee got here. There's not many players. Obviously, Kevin Jennings was the big one. Derek McFall looks like he's going to be a dude. There's not too many players that are on the verge of having massive roles yet that were recruited for the ACC, if that makes sense, from the high school ranks. So the coming years, like watching your Draymond Odoms, your Abel Hoopies, your Drew Hills on the offensive line, your Tyrone Winslow, your Jalen Shivers, how Mark Iannacore does, Speedy Nettles, who was a guy that they love. They beat out, multiple Power Five. All these types of guys, the next couple years is when you're going to assess, like, okay, how did they do? How'd they do evaluating? Like, are we going to look back and see that most of the 2024 class is gone, or half the 2025 class is gone? No, they need to start hitting on these high school guys. So anyway, kind of a long meandering conversation there around departures, but we continue on, and we want to continue to remind you guys that we're also presented by our friends at Manny's Uptown Tex-Mex. 4 locations across DFW: Heath, Saxey, Coyton Campbell, just in Richardson there, just south of Plano. And then, of course, the Lakewood location right on Mockingbird, next to Mockingbird and Abrams right there. Just great spot. Love their food. Was over there for lunch yesterday. Going to go back again tomorrow. Of course, you got the margaritas. But I think the greatest thing about Manny's is I went there for lunch, and the lunch menu was just off the charts good. So many options, great low prices, and everything is made fresh in store. And remember, queso. When you say queso, you get 10% off your order at Manny's, which is huge. 10% off your order. It excludes alcohol and third-party delivery apps. But when you do dine in or carry out, Manny's will hook you up with a 10% off discount. That's the way to do it. Their prices are already low. Their food is unbelievable. Somebody on the board posted about one of their shrimp taco salads. Unbelievable. I had the lunch fajitas yesterday. They were unbelievable. It was so good. So Dean and I went over there and did a lot of planning and all sorts of conversations around the offseason, what's next for the site. So really excited about that. And that future certainly includes our friends at Manny. So say queso when you go in there. Don't forget now. Say queso and get 10% off your order at all 4 Manny's locations across DFW. Appreciate them for supporting the On the Pony Express podcast and making great food and great margaritas. All right, now is the time where most people on here are ready to hear the portal scoop. What's going to happen? Well, guess what? You got to go to ontheponyexpress.com for all of that. Just $1 to subscribe. But we will talk about where SMU can address their needs and do some of those things. And I think I want to start with the running back room, because the running back room is an intriguing room, but I think most need to kind of have your expectations set a little bit here. I don't know if they're going to be able to go out and just grab a difference-making guy. I don't see them doing that because they trust Chris Johnson Jr. They trust Derek McFall. They love the direction this running back room is going with D'Amico Green coming in. I mean, he is really somebody that I think is going to be a difference maker for SMU rather quickly. You've got 2 guys, but D'Amico's kind of the bigger one. I could really see SMU getting a lot out of D'Amico, though, as the bigger back in the room, which makes finding a running back when you have 3 young options. I mean, all of these guys, Chris Johnson Jr. has 3 years left. Derek McFall has 4 years left. D'Amico Green has 5 years left to play for. So you have the gamut of young running backs of your choosing as far as who can pan out, who can really emerge, and all of those things. And let me tell you, that's a tough sell in the portal. Even with money, that's a tough sell. Now, I guess you could say, if you wanted to be probably dishonest with them, you could say, oh, all those guys are young. You're going to come in here and play right away. You need to find somebody who has had a relatively solid, 300 yards a year, maybe looking for a power conference, situation. SMU, by the way, and all these colleges out there is that opportunity to kind of front load a little bit so they could get a little bit of money, come in, be a depth guy, compete. If you end up being the hot guy, you can end up being the starting guy. That's how SMU is going to figure out this running back rotation anyway. So if you come in to do that and you do it for your final year and you make make some plays, that can help you down the line. So I think we're going to be seeing SMU go after a running back. I would just say keep your general expectations low. Like, of course, Jade Knott was talked about on the board, who's already signed with Oklahoma. Shout out Oklahoma for figuring out how to find a high profile player in the portal. But you also got to remember that it's just not necessarily a position that they want to spend big on anyway. Like they have bigger needs on this team to make sure that this team is what the expectations are for, like meets the expectations for this program, for this team. And so that's really important to keep an eye on and keep in perspective when talking about the running back position. And you can say, look what we did with Brashard Smith. Kids care, but they also have agents now. They also have people in their ear about, oh, you got to do this, got to do that. So it's all a difficult line to walk for these coaches across the country. I mean, that's the hard part about it, because there's no push as much anymore to be developed. These players always bet on themselves, and their representation at this level normally doesn't look out for development. They say, oh, you're the man. You could go in there and do your thing. And it doesn't matter what situation, as long as you're getting a little bit of money or a lot of money in some cases. So it's a hard position to recruit. It was some of the top running backs in the portal in December got way too much money. Like NFL teams would never spend some of this money that colleges did. I know it's all relative to the sport and the salary cap, but man, some teams way overpaid at running back. Unless you just literally don't have anyone and you just, I don't know, still think you overspent no matter what. But SMU really likes their running backs that they have. They need to address the position with depth. So that's one of the top needs in the portal for SMU to go after and take a look at. When you look at the other positions on offense, quarterback, you're obviously fine. And you're really in good shape long term. I mean, Ty Hawkins looks the part. Keldrick Luster, they like. You have Tyler Van Dyke rehabbing and going to probably sit out this fall, I would imagine. I mean, that's probably what's going to happen. But then you have players like or positions like wide receiver. Do they need to go after one, because they do have Jamarian Carroll that's entering the portal. Now, he was already passed by the freshmen Dalen Singleton and Jalen Cooper, but that's one guy who's out the door. And I don't know, does that mean you address the position and you take that number and you go elsewhere with it, or do you put it somewhere else? I think they would love to find one more offensive lineman. I don't know how much of a priority it's going to be, but I could see them doing it, because that right guard position is still something that is up for grabs. And if I'm Garen Justice, here's a quick aside. If I'm Garen Justice, I'm going Savion Byrd, and we'll see how Draymond Odoms looks and if that needs to be a thing. Then you have Logan Parr, Addison Nichols. I would go PJ Williams and then Andrew Chamblee. Like, if Andrew Chamblee's done what he's done in the spring, and Rhett Lasher was talking about this week, that'd be my starting five. I think it'd be pretty darn good. So, and then you can kind of rotate in a Josh Bates and things like that. But if you really want a PJ Williams to be your right tackle, and he's very comfortable on the right side, then you have to go out and you maybe find a guard. Abel Hoopy, Alex Woods, those guys are going to also compete. They're in the mix. We'll see how it goes there. But offensive line, I know that SMU, for those of you who want them to go out and find a left tackle, not going to happen. In my opinion, not going to happen. Draymond Odoms coming in this summer. He's a beast. He's a top 100, top 50, whatever prospect, 5-star on 24/7. He's got the tools. And if Savion Byrd, if they decide, hey, you know what, it's time, and they're going to throw him out there. Look, Marcus Bryant started as a true freshman. I think Branson Hickman did. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe redshirted. Of course, our friend Hayden Howerton started as a true freshman. You can do it. And Draymond Odoms is freaky. I mean, he really is freaky. So I think Cody Belair described him as a dancing grizzly bear, something like that. So when you have that type of praise, when you have that type of talent, and SMU hasn't really signed a guy like this probably since the 80s, you got to throw him to the wolves. Like when you look at 5-star offense tackles, there's one of two ways that they go, in my opinion, watching it from my end. Instant impact starter, your left tackle for 3 years, they're gone, NFL draft, first round. That's one way. Your Cam Robinsons, there's been a couple other, I think there's one that was at Tennessee. Maybe he went in the second round, but first round, guys that you just know. And then there's guys that got to put on weight and they're going to take time to develop, but they're also freaky. And then they end up being, first round picks. And then you have a couple busts here and there, of course, but offensive tackle is starting to get, like the 5 stars, it's starting to get a pretty good hit rate. So we'll see how Draymond Odoms is, but that's why they're not going to go after a left tackle in the portal. They're not going to address tight end, in my opinion. They've got RJ Maryland. They've got Matthew Hibner back. They've got Adam Moore, who Rhett Lashley talked up. Stone Eby's at H-back. You've got Trip Reardon. You've got Devin Martin coming in this summer. You've got Miles Uter coming in this summer. So you have some pieces there to make that work. And then wide receiver is probably my other question on offense, whether they go out and they try to find somebody. But I don't think it's going to be a position that they really spend on. Jordan Hudson has had a great spring. I mean, let's be, I was on the train last year as far as him being the dude and him stepping into that role and being a number one, and it didn't necessarily work out. There were games that we saw the vision and we saw what he was capable of, but it didn't necessarily happen. I think he finished second on the team in receiving, maybe third now that I think about it. But I'm going to let J Hud do his thing. He's had a great spring. It has to translate to the games finally. So we'll see how that goes. They have a plan to get 2 tight ends on the field with RJ Maryland and Matthew Hibner. So that is going to take maybe some pressure off of having to go get a wide receiver, especially when you have Link Rhodes coming in. You have Cartarius Brown and Isaiah Robertson coming in this summer as freshmen. So I don't think you need to, but probably a position that they at least look out for. So that kind of wraps up the offensive side of things. So make sure, to kind of keep expectations low, I would say, on the offensive side. The defensive side is where I think we can see things really, really roll. So before we talk about the defensive side, I do want to remind you guys about our friends at Mignon. Easter brunch, Easter Sunday. Big opportunity for you to check out one of the finest dining experiences in DFW. Head to Plano, but head to OpenTable.com or OpenTable app to book your reservation at Mignon. Their brunch starts at 10:30. Unbelievable Easter brunch lined up. And that is a prefixed menu, but just going to be outstanding from what Nick Nator and his family have told me. Then you've got dinner that night. They're taking reservations, full menu there. Make sure you celebrate this weekend at Mignon. Perfect weekend to be out on their patio too. So appreciate Mignon. Can't wait to get by there again and enjoy one of the best dining experiences in DFW. The defensive side. All right. We talked on Tuesday, I think, about Ja'Kai Lange coming in from, or Ja'Kai Lang from, we have a Jake Lange at SMU now, and Ja'Kai Lang visiting SMU. The Missouri Tigers edge rusher that is coming in on a visit on Thursday. So he'll be in tomorrow. Then he trips to Colorado on Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. SMU, and this is interesting here, right? Because David Bailey gets a complete insane bag from Stanford. And if you bring in a David Bailey, you're looking at a room that would be like, I mean, you're bringing in this big ticket transfer. Somebody's going to leave. And then you're still left within this position. Ja'Kai Lang coming in with 3 years of eligibility left could be a really nice pairing to go with DJ Warner as your next up because you look at the breakdown on scholarships and kind of, the what's next. You're going to lose Isaiah Smith. You're going to lose Cam Robertson. I mean, that all of a sudden puts a ton of pressure at the edge position because remember, this past cycle, Chin Onyegoro decided, hey, he doesn't like the situation that he's walking into even after, DJ Warner signed, and they kind of told him, they released him. He goes to UNC. So you lose your freshman edge rusher. So you bring in DJ Warner, which is great. Him and Billy Walton are going to be, Billy Walton's a redshirt sophomore. Deshaun Warner is a sophomore. If DJ Warner does find a way to redshirt this year, which he has so much speed, I just don't know if you can do it. But you have Isaiah Smith, Billy Walton, and then you could kind of add that third piece in there for the future in Ja'Kai Lang. Now, who knows if SMU gets him? I don't know. I don't know what the odds are on that. But Colorado's the other visit, so that's certainly something to keep an eye on. And we'll see. But when you look at the position long term, I get why they're looking at doing this. And then if you get, maybe 2025 guys at this position, then it can maybe settle things down. I think Ja'Kai Lang, he's listed 6'3", 250 at Missouri. I wonder if he can also play a little bit of that strong side end. So something to keep an eye on there as a whole when you look at that recruitment. And I don't know if it's a position they're going to go all out for. What they will have to go all out for is defensive tackle. And look, part of that is SMU is facing a really interesting situation with Jonathan Jefferson. He injured his knee in spring ball. The former Georgia transfer, do they end up having to get surgery? And then does that end his season? That's something that Rhett Lashley sounded like he didn't necessarily know what was going to happen with that. But when you look at that position with Jeffrey Mbe and Terry Webb, it looks very good. But the depth behind it certainly still in question. You have Eric Taylor, you have who's the other one they brought in? You have Eric Taylor, who they brought in. DeMarge Lewis has been hurt, but they're hoping to get him back. You have Blake Burris, you have Mike Yohan, Sanjo Njiki, and then you have Tyrone Winslow, who's young. Kevin Allen's had a good spring. He's really played hard, and we'll see kind of how his summer development continues. But when you look at the overall position, it doesn't necessarily give you that warm and fuzzy that you did, I think, before the 2024 season, in my opinion, because you had obviously star player Elijah Roberts. They end up getting Jared Harrison Hunt in this spring window, which was like, holy crap, like tossing in a Miami starter on top of what they went out and got last year for that position with Corey Roberson coming back. You had Mike Lockhart. You had Tank Booker at that stage already. You had brought in Jonathan Jefferson. Those four, they nailed. Like, it was kind of apparent that the quote-unquote worst of the bunch was Corey Roberson in a sense. And that was even after, as well, they had Jafari Harvey in there. I mean, it was just kind of a totally different situation. And then they added Jared Harrison Hunt on top. This time around, you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, your starters are Jonathan Jefferson, if healthy, currently not, but Jeffrey Mbe and then Terry Webb. Those two guys you hit on. But then you're like, okay, what's next? Because if you have Jonathan Jefferson healthy and then you can add a defensive tackle in there, then you have four. Then you're in a much better situation. All you need to do is get DeMarge Lewis and Eric Taylor to game day. And if they give you five snaps or so, that's a good situation. So I still think they're going to go heavy defensive tackle. They just know how important it is. Remember those moments of last year when SMU missed Tank Booker for a couple games. I mean, missed that game against Louisville. Can you imagine? I mean, that if there's a body type SMU needs in this portal cycle, it is a Tank Booker. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Remember that Louisville game? Isaac Brown had a good game in that game, the true freshman. Isaac Brown comes to Ford Stadium this year, if SMU had Tank Booker in there, maybe it's a different situation as far as them trying to run on him with that big body in there. But anyway, they don't have a Tank Booker this year. I would imagine they're trying to find that body type, but we'll see. It's coveted. It really is so coveted, so difficult to find. So we will keep an eye on the defense tackle position. That is one that I would say SMU needs to step up, make a big play on. And if you do, you're going to be in a really solid situation going forward, even as you await Jonathan Jefferson to get healthy. So something to keep a close eye on. Linebacker now is one where I gotta wonder. Again, we hadn't seen Kyle Firm, and Zach Smith, of course, is leaving now. So SMU does have to probably find a linebacker, just depth. I mean, they could probably make do. I don't think they need to spend, but they probably need to address the position. So we'll see. Remember, there's so many players that are in the portal or going to be in the portal, and SMU can find someone. They can find someone if they really want to address that position. Finally, the secondary. So Ricky Hunley has talked about this being the time where Deuce Harmon, Marcellus Barnes, Jalen Davis Robinson, AJ Davis probably need to be the guys, and they need to be dudes. And they know enough to figure out if they need to go after a corner, and I don't think they are, because they have Javion Holiday, who probably needs a red shirt, but we'll see. Zay Gentry is going to come in this summer. They're really high on him, and maybe those guys just kind of battle it out as the fifth corner. And then you have Speedy Nettles in there as well, who's trying to push his way in to that rotation. So lots of options here. I mean, I think they've done enough with the cornerback room because you have Deuce Harmon, you have Marcellus Barnes as your guy for the future. They're recruiting a bunch of good corners right now as a whole that I think they're in decent shape for. So the long-term outlook on that position is pretty good. So I don't know if they wanted to go get somebody, it would probably be somebody who's, wanting to maybe come home. The question is more so at safety. Does SMU go after a safety? Because that is one where SMU has Ahmad Moses. They have Isaiah Wacobia. They have Lamadrick Spencer. They have Kyron Chambers. They do have some young players like an Abdul Muhammad, Jalen Moses in there. But the wild card, and of course, they have the freshmen like Sael Reyes coming this summer, Elijah Pratt coming this summer, Tyron Polley, who is an early enrollee and certainly looks the part. But Jaden Milner-Jones has gotten hurt. He's been out for the spring. Haven't seen him out there. And then you look at that and you're like, okay, SMU likes to play their three safeties. Kyron Chambers is somebody that is kind of turned it on. He's come on a little bit in spring, but can you rely on him? Lamadrick Spencer is still in his first year in the system. First year, let alone first months in the system. So do you address the safety position with that kind of injury depth question? Because Scott Simons wants nothing more than to see, this 2025 freshman class. I'm including Lamadrick Spencer in there just because I have no idea what his JUCO status is as far as what he is in school right now. But this 2025 haul, he wants nothing more for them to kind of sit, learn, play a little bit this year, and then take over next year. I mean, with some of the older guys too. But so you want to protect that future, but they could use another safety. I mean, truthfully, they just could. So something to keep a close eye on here as SMU, by the way, on my count, as I'll quickly, I guess, update my roster here. When you look at their total number of scholarship players across the board, they are now below 85 on my end of things. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else that I kind of missed here. Yeah, Zach Smith. So they've got a couple spots now to play with, at least, again, by my count. But they've got to, hit on some guys here in the future. So overall, before we do this, we'll go closing thoughts in just a second. But I do want to remind you guys, we're also presented by our friends at StatusJet. Of course, statusjet.com. Reach out to them today to start planning the trip of a lifetime, whether it be family and friends going on a vacation or taking clients, taking work colleagues on a work trip. They can set you up and plan the whole thing for you. Transportation, food, lodging. They can help create the experience of a lifetime for you. And the great thing about StatusJet is there's no membership required. So you can do this as a one-off trip. You can all split it. Just call them today and reach out, mention on the Pony Express. They'll give you a discount on a round trip flight and see what works and see if this is an option for you, because there's some tough places to get to where this might be the way to go. So reach out to our friends at StatusJet today and plan the trip of a lifetime. SMU doing a lot of planning over the last months for this spring portal window, now coming together quickly as they are getting to learn who, of course, is going into the portal on the opposite side of things. And then, of course, looking at who SMU is losing. They've got their final kind of tally on that here in the coming days. And I don't think, I mean, you never know with the portal. I think you're going to see most of SMU's players that actually go in relatively early and start that process so the coaching staff can help them get to where they want to go. So we will see kind of where that goes. But overall, SMU has to build this roster to continue to hit the expectations that are now on this program. College football playoff. I mean, that's the expectation now. It doesn't mean it has to happen or pitchforks are going to be flying like a handful of SEC schools or up in Ohio or up in Michigan or out at USC or Oregon. But SMU now has an expectation when you have a quarterback like this, like Kevin Jennings, to get to the promised land, to get back to Charlotte. Man, hope it's a better time than last time, at least during the game. But it was still an unbelievable scene there. But SMU wants to kick that door down. You know, Rhett Lashley is one of the most competitive people you'll ever come across. I mean, truthfully, you could tell if you're out there at practice. Obviously, you see it in games. You know, coach loses it, you know, on some calls and things like that. But you could tell he really, really wants to win. I mean, there's no doubt. And this whole staff is kind of wired that way. And they balance that with the culture of their program and protecting the culture that allows them, if they assemble the right talent, to have the best chance to win each and every Saturday. And that is the not pickle that they're in, but the conversations that they have to have in this spring portal window. The 2025 SMU Mustangs are already well on their way to being built. They've gone through the winter workouts. They're now approaching the end of spring in a sense, and then they'll get into summer. If you drop in 3 or 4 or 5 new players, they better be culture fits. They better be able to assimilate fast, because that is probably the number one thing that Rhett Lashley and his staff try to do every single day is protect the culture. And at the same time, this is a team with a couple of holes that need to be plugged with really, really quality seal. And that's where the portal window, this cycle is so important. And remember, the other piece of it is retaining and protecting your roster. And that's why we're, not having any more spring media watching availability during this portal window. Doesn't want any more video out on some of their top guys, but they want to retain them. They want to retain this roster, the players that they need to compete, that are key to the culture as well, and keep them happy and get through it. And I'm sure it's going to be a period of 10 days here. I guess I didn't mention that 10 days that guys can enter the portal. That Rhett Lashley and his staff are going to be sweating it just about every day. I mean, I can guarantee you they're not going out on the road recruiting, even though the evaluation period's open. They're babysitting this roster as they should. So hope that gave you guys a good glimpse into the portal and what SMU has to do and what they need to put together. And so good little primer, hopefully, for you guys as the portal begins to get rolling. So make sure you reach out to our friends, all of our supporters. Go to Manny's Tex-Mex, say queso for 10% off your order. Check out Thomas Auto Group, up 75 in McKinney, statusjet.com. Book your trip of a lifetime today with your discount from On the Pony Express. And also reach out to Mark Villasana, presenting sponsor, and make sure you go over your insurance policy coverage and talk some SMU football with him as well. He loves this stuff. 214-352-5656 is the way to get in touch with him. And one last shout out, Roback.com. Get your spring polo situation all lined up, ready to go. Get some new shorts, some joggers, ready for springtime and summer. The summer travel is great with the Roback jogger. Love them. Make sure you use code PONY20 for 20% off your order at Roback.com. So appreciate Roback for all the support of the On the Pony Express podcast as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Get ready for portal season. It's here. Subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com for just $1. Just $1 for your first week. So join us on the site, and we'll catch you guys next time on another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody.
Follow us on your socials on X at SMU on 3 and on Instagram at on3SMU.
And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.